Okay, we're here with Rachel Alexander, who's the lead reporter from the Arizona Sun-Times. Today, we wanted to talk a bit about election security and particularly prosecutorial immunity for election officials. Lucas, do you want to start us out with just a little bit of background on what we want to talk about today, and then maybe we can get a quick introduction from Rachel?
Absolutely. We'll start with a discussion about the Tina Peters trial. And Tina Peters was a county clerk in Mesa County, Colorado. That's the western side of Colorado, in Grand Junction, Colorado. And in 2020, there was things that occurred there that made national news, national headlines. And here we are 4 years later, and Friday, a case was brought against her by the district attorney, by the people of Colorado, and Tina Peters has endured all sorts of lawfare in the last couple of years, and so I thought I've been keeping my eye on that case in the last several years because, as we've talked about on this show in the past, where do we draw the lines of prosecutorial immunity? Where do we draw the lines of law and justice in an adversarial system? So I think this case brings up all sorts of interesting questions, and Rachel has been tweeting on Twitter a lot of information with regards to election security and also the Tina Peters trial. So I asked her to come on to give us an update on what's been happening on the trial or at the trial, and also to turn to that conversation to some of these broader topics with regards to how we run our elections and what our expectations are of elected officials. So Rachel, welcome on. We're very glad to have you. I don't know how you would like to introduce yourself or what you'd like to say, but please tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's talk about that trial.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Yeah, my background kind of set me up to live tweet this trial because I was the former Maricopa County elections attorney. I'm a former prosecutor myself for Maricopa County, assistant attorney general for the state of Arizona. And before that, I had a tech background. So I'm right here in the Grand Central, Maricopa County, where we have a lot of election fraud. And I now write for the Arizona Sun-Times, and I also have a weekly opinion column at Town Hall. So basically with this trial, the way I see it is, and this gets into the prosecutorial immunity part that you guys want to talk about, is that basically Tina thought she was clearly abiding by the law. And if you want to try to look at statutes and rules and try to interpret them certain ways and say, oh, no, she had to have violated this rule or this statute. That's what's going on in this case. In most situations, if there was another clerk who had done the same thing she had did, but it didn't involve election integrity, nobody would bat an eye. Nobody would think anything of it. So this whole case has been trying to get the government's witnesses, who are mostly election employees that served under her or, with her, maybe some Colorado Secretary of State employees, who are all pretty much election fraud deniers, in my opinion. And so that's why and a lot of them have been given immunity deals or threatened with prosecution. So that's why they're getting on the witness stand and saying what the prosecution wants them to say. But then Tina's attorneys come back, and under cross-examination, they get them to contradict themselves and point out, oh, wait, she really wasn't violating a rule. And by the way, when you violate rules, it's, they're not like violating statutes. Most of them don't even come with penalties, much less criminal penalties. But what I'm seeing as very significant coming out in this trial is the main reason that they claim that they started to go after Tina was because they said BIOS passwords to election computers were leaked onto the internet, right? And, me starting to cover the trial, I was really wondering, well, how are they going to get around that? I mean, that does look really bad. These BIOS passwords are leaked and people can hack into the computers, right? Well, the testimony has come out that that's absolutely false. First of all, the government's own witnesses are admitting that these BIOS passwords were obscured. So they were completely useless. You couldn't use them to hack into anything. And secondly, when the software installation took place, the BIOS passwords were automatically overwritten. So when they were leaked to the internet later, they were no good for that reason as well. And I think probably your audience, if they've been paying attention to this, they know this all went down because Tina Peters, after she was elected, noticed that all these far left Democrats were getting elected to the Mesa City Council, in an area that was 65%, Republican, 35% Democrat, something like that. And she said even the far left Democrats were shocked that they got elected. And she also was told that there was probably fraud in the 2020 election. And a lot of cyber experts believe that the voting machines were manipulated and that's how it happened. So all Tina wanted to do was, once she heard that the Secretary of State's office was going to, come in and have a Dominion software upgrade of the election files. She said a Dominion employee told her this will overwrite all the files, a lot of the key files from the election. And Colorado's law makes it a crime if you don't save election files for 25 months. Federal law also says it's against the law to not keep files for 22 months. So Tina just wanted to make a backup of it. So she brought in somebody, an IT professional, to view the backup to view the upgrade as it was going. And she also had a backup made. So that's the whole crux of the case against her.
And a little bit of background too that I think is very important, and I think that we need to bear in mind was in February leading into that election, and this all happens or starts to go down in March of that year, or roughly some of these things start happening in March. But there was also ballots that had been discovered in a paper ballots that had been discovered in a Mesa County box for the previous election that fall, and they would not have changed the election, but Tina was already under fire to double check and make sure that the election was secure. And I think that that's exactly what she's doing. And notice like the charges that have been brought against her, and what, there are 7 felonies and 3 misdemeanors brought against her, but none of them is that she manipulated the vote count.
Right. And what I find so disturbing about these charges, as someone who, since the state bar came after me because I'm a conservative attorney and they used all these vague ethical rules against me, the same thing is going on with these charges against Tina. They're all very vague statutes that you literally use to take down any official if you wanted to, what was one of the charges? Trying to falsely, give information to another public official, something like that. I mean, you could use that to describe anything when somebody is, having a conversation with another public official, or you're talking about a controversial issue. These are not black and white statutes. These are broad, vague statutes. And I'm sure you guys know about the book, 3 Felonies a Day, how the average American commits 3 felonies a day and doesn't even know it, by defense attorney Harvey Silvergate. This is what they're now using. We have so many laws on the books that are so broad and so vast that, like Stalin's, chief of police said, you show me the man, I'll show you the crime.
Absolutely. There's apart from the vagueness of the felonies, I think it's important to bear in mind that they have not even tried to make the case that she was attempting to manipulate the vote. And yet the reporting and a lot of the concern that I see on it is drummed up to like that level of hysteria. So I find it interesting that somebody who was acting in good faith with regards to concerns about election security ends up being a scapegoat for what she was actually concerned about. In the trial that's been going on, has the prosecution tried to make the case that Tina was the person who actually leaked the BIOS passwords online, or are they merely asserting that she's culpable in part because she opened the door for a security breach in inviting someone to look at that upgrade.
Correct. They aren't trying to say that she leaked them online, but they're trying to say she opened the door. And they keep emphasizing and saying she's not being actually prosecuted for the BIOS passwords getting online. She's being prosecuted for these, corrupt acts she took with officials. And so that's how they're kind of getting around it. But what they want to do is they want the jury to just focus on the passwords being leaked. And because, like I said, when I started watching this trial, I thought, gosh, that doesn't sound very good. But that whole argument has been completely devastated. So their case just keeps changing as the trial goes on. And, I learned a lot from CanCon and Ash in America. You guys are probably familiar with them. They're covering this even closer than I am. They pointed out that, gosh, I just lost my train of thought, but it had to do with, so the prosecution got completely surprised when Tina Peters' defense team started bringing in screenshots of the Signal chat that their star witness, Gerald Wood, had been in. It forced them to completely try to change the angle of their case against her. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up, you guys. Like they keep changing the way they're talking about her. At one point she did this wrong, and then at this point they try to focus on something else that she did wrong because their witnesses keep being contradicted, being caught in, I believe, absolute perjury. Their star witness, Gerald Wood, I think he just lied over and over and over again on the stand, especially claiming he didn't even know about that Signal chat group.
Yes, I did. I actually caught, and I was watching the live feed when that questioning was going on, and I had not been following the trial, not been following all of it leading into that, but I happened to catch it that day. There was a Signal chat group amongst some of the county officials, the clerk and the deputy clerk, and I'm not sure who else, but Gerald Wood was in that, and he claimed not to be, and yet they had his handle. I forget what his handle was. It was a pretty good one.
Trebuchet.
What was it?
Trebuchet.
Yeah, Trebuchet. That's a nice sort of medium level security handle. For those of who don't know, Trebuchet, Trebuchet, is a Roman weapon of war. Some great videos of guys recreating it and destroying cars with rocks. But
it's always the thing. It's the Trebuchet folks versus the catapult people, right? It's
right. Well,
the big battle, which was better. Trebuchet, obviously.
I mean, I'm right there with you, but I also like guys in their fascination with Roman history. But yeah, he handled Trebuchet, and not only that, but a picture of what was it, him and his wife, or him and his daughter
on the Signal account. Like, you can't get any closer ID than that. He kept claiming, well, lots of people choose the name Trebuchet.
Right. As we have to describe actually what it is. So wow. And perjured himself on the stand. What is the story with Deputy Clerk Belinda Knisley? Because it seems that she also had the same concerns with the election security that Tina had, leading into March and into the summoning of someone to look at the security upgrade, etc. But she is a witness for the prosecution now. So was she given a plea deal? Was she charged leading to this, and then decided to sit and make and be a witness for the prosecution? What happened there?
That's absolutely what I think happened. She ended up pleading guilty. She served 30 days in jail. It's like 2 years of probation, I think 100 or 200 hours of community service. I think it was a $2,000 fine. You know, that woman is not happy. To me, it was clear she's turned on Tina over what happened. And have you guys been following what Peter Bernegger tweeted about her?
No.
This is very fascinating. So basically, what some of these cyber experts believe happened is under her username, her login, the voting machines were manipulated during the election. It was like an astronomical number. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it might have been like, 78 times she logged in. And so Peter Bernegger, who's a tremendous election integrity investigator out of Wisconsin, he's the one who discovered the smurfing going on with Act Blue. He calls for her arrest a couple days ago. He thinks that she actually was manipulating the machines herself. Now, I was talking to CanCon and Action America a couple days ago, and they believe that just because it's her login doesn't mean it was actually her. And again, this is all speculation, and I don't want to go down that road where I'm going to get sued. So I'm just reporting what I've been seeing and what I've been hearing.
Well, there's also the judge in this, the judge who's presiding over this case is Matthew Barrett. And when the trial started, I did some digging also because I wanted to, again, to me, there's a question here of prosecutorial immunity for elected officials. And one answer that one person might give you to these sort of questions arising is it's America. We live in democratic, in notions of, we have notions of democracy and a democratic republic. And part of the answer to our concerns about elections or actions by elected officials that we don't like is we have another election. And those people are subjected to the approval of their peers, not by the judicial system and a jury, but by an actual election. And that election, to me, should be the stronger and the stronger, more stable and profound action of a democracy. So I was interested in questions as to who were the county commissioners when this occurred. Did Tina Peters bring this? Did she bring these concerns to the county commissioners? The county commissioners didn't want to do that. Are they still the county commissioners today? And I know that they're not. I know that the county commissioners at the time were Scott McInnes, Rose Pugliese, and John Justman. I know that two of them were termed out. I don't know what happened to the third. But also, what I found interesting was that the district judge who had been nominated under Hickenlooper when he was governor, and had been affirmed in elections, because I know we often see judges appointed and then affirmed in an election. He had been removed due to concerns about sexual improprieties and ethics concerns and violations. And so I find it interesting that we have an appointed, a judge who's been appointed over this, and I don't know that he's been affirmed by a regular election in Mesa County. And not only that, I see that Dan Rubenstein is the prosecuting attorney. He's been there since 2015. So he was there at the time that this occurred. But again, I find it concerning that we are using the judicial system to call into question actions that are conducted by elected officials. And not only that, but Tina Peters, there was a recall effort when these things came to light, and that recall election failed. And so it would seem to me that would satisfy like the burden of concern or impropriety. So do you have any, have you tracked any of the, I guess my question is, was the was the ethical violations by Lance Trembiza, who was previously the district judge, were those, and he was forced to step down in 2023, or ethics violation came down and he stepped down in January of 2023. Did this case have any bearing on that? Has there been any, I don't know, has he made any comments to that or of the like, or, and I guess my second question is, why is the district attorney, why is he bringing this case whenever there was a recall election and these are elected officials?
Okay, so first of all, I want to get to this sordid background of the judge and point out that of the prior judge. I just want to point out that there is this double standard that when people in the legal system who are, the favorite golden child, when they make mistakes, they break the law, they do something wrong, it's a double standard what happens to them. And we can see this with the judge now, and we can see this with both of the two key prosecutors. So first of all, the judge on the case now, did you guys know that in February, the Court of Appeals reversed him for the same exact type of behavior that he's doing in the Tina Peters trial, which is stating his opinion and conclusion about her guilt when that should be up to the jury. And in one of my articles, I pulled the whole quote from him where he refused to let the defense put on a bunch of their case because he said it's irrelevant since she's already committed a bunch of crimes. So for that reason, I believe that was the most significant part of the case. I think, okay, first of all, I do think that the jury is going to find her guilty, and I can get into that why, but I think it's going to be reversed based on that. And then let's look at the two prosecutors. The chief prosecutor in this case, Shapiro, he was fired for insubordination not too long ago. And then the other prosecutor, I don't have her name off the top of my head, the female prosecutor, she was also disciplined for bad activity. So these are not the type of people who should be prosecuting this case with, I was a prosecutor for several years. I've never been disciplined. All I ever got was good reviews. To be handling this top case in the country that everybody is watching, you shouldn't have people like that on there. But I believe the reason they did it is because, they know that these prosecutors are willing to get down and dirty and do the kind of, sleazy maneuvers. And same with a judge. Why couldn't they have picked a judge who wasn't going to, already conclude that she was guilty? But we all know the judge is appointed by a Democrat. And I've looked up social media, LinkedIn on the prosecutors. They're all Democrats. And so, let's see, your other two questions, you were wondering, why are they going after her even after, she's no longer in office and they already tried the recall? Well, this is the way the left operates. They pick their juicy targets and then they go after them like a maniac because they want to hold them up as an example for everybody else to say, do not do this or we will destroy your life just like we're doing to these people. So somebody out there picked Tina and they decided this was going to be their person to destroy. And then finally, I wanted to point out, you were saying, why isn't there prosecutorial immunity for these elected officials? And by the way, I did I glanced at a couple of the crimes since I couldn't remember their names exactly. It was election tampering. Okay, that's pretty vague, general, right? Official misconduct, even vaguer, right? And attempting to influence public servants. So, basically what they do when they try to nail public officials is they basically try to say they were acting out of the scope of their official duties. And again, you can pretty much put anything into that box. Like, the one I've seen is, let's say you get a DUI, right? A DUI has nothing to do with your official duties, right? So you would think that somebody, that clearly you wouldn't get prosecuted for, right? What happens is all these leftists, like here we have this election fraud denier, Cochise County attorney, Brian McIntyre. He got caught doing a super extreme DUI. Like that is, I didn't even heard of that term. Like that DUI is so bad. I think he blew a .22. He ended up with nothing, virtually nothing. The state bar, you go to his profile on their website, nothing there. Like I had to have a friend persist and file a bar complaint against him over it. And then when the state bar came back and said, we're not going to do anything, my friend persisted. And finally, the state bar came back and said, oh, well, he quietly entered a diversion agreement earlier this year. And, there's nothing that's going to show up on his record. And then, and same with the prosecution, it was very minuscule. I don't even think he served more than that evening in jail. He pled out to like a simple DUI. That was it. So there's a double standard going on there with officials. If you're a conservative, you have no immunity. They will do everything and stretch the law, interpret little technical rules, a certain way to nail you. But, if you're a Democrat, election fraud denier doing their bidding, I mean, you can get a super extreme DUI and skate.
Well, there's something there that I think is very interesting because, the ethics violations of the Bar Association is an agreement between members of a legal guild. And I have my own like concerns about the bar and the Bar Association's appointments of themselves as those with the knowledge to represent people in court. I thought we were trying to get away from inquisitorial systems of justice when we started the experiment of the United States of America. So, but it's also quite interesting to see like that drifting of norms when it comes to rules for bureaucrats and rules for elected officials. And we see over and over, like in campaigns, whenever any issue is at stake. I mean, one of the easy things to do is not talk about policy, but to talk about ad hominem attacks with other problems with an elected official. So it's sad to see that distinction that at least the legal, members of a bar or people engaged in the legal profession, judges and lawyers, should remember. And to subject an elected official to that in a court of law is gross to me. So, but maybe, and you've mentioned that you were a what was it, a lawyer or you're engaged in you were a representative of I don't, something with Maricopa County. Do you see some of these same issues happening in Maricopa County? You also said that you see election fraud in Maricopa County. What's going on there? Because I assume it's that background that led you to so much interest in the Tina Peters case also.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've really covered Kari Lake quite a bit. Especially, when she was running for governor in 2022. And it was just absolutely shocking to all of us, conservative local reporters, especially, who had been covering her race on the ground every day, writing articles about the latest polls and seeing the groundswell of support for her. I mean, she's like a Trump in heels. I think the MSM, made up that nickname, but, I kind of like it. And so, she and these other America First MAGA candidates, Abe Hamadeh, Mark Fincham, they were all trouncing their opponents. And we were all so excited going into the 2022 election. And so for all three of them to, contradict the polls, not just the good Rasmussen, which is always accurate, but all the left-wing polls showed them winning for the most part, especially Kari and Abe. And so, we knew something was up when the counting just kept going on and on and on. I think it went on for like 2 weeks after that race, after the election day. So everybody's been looking into it since then, especially the Arizona Senate and a lot of independent election investigators. And what I think most people have concluded is these leftists who are fraudulently trying to manipulate the election, they're doing it in multiple ways. It's not just the voting machines. It's not just the absentee ballots and the signature verification. It's multiple ways. And we keep getting proved correct. We keep seeing smoking guns, but nothing ever happens to the smoking guns because the legal system is so corrupt, judges don't want to see the evidence. So, for example, you guys might have heard here about a month ago or so, Maricopa County temporary elections employee whose background was a radical progressive activist working on propositions, collecting signatures, working for multiple elected Democrat officials here. This guy got caught on video stealing a key fob in Maricopa County elections that even election fraud denier, Maricopa County Supervisor Bill Gates, said afterwards it would have been able to reprogram every single of the 140 voting machine tabulators on election day. So this guy gets caught, and so far there's been almost nothing. I mean, we heard that he was arrested and we heard that he was behind bars, but is anything going to happen? I mean, there is literally a case that I am not willing to talk about on air with you guys, because even though it's the biggest smoking gun of election fraud, in my opinion, in 2020, because what the judges are doing, these defamation lawsuits and libel lawsuits are being launched over talking about that particular smoking gun. And let's just say there are some really bad verdicts against them. And this gets into the weeds, but if you guys want, I'm willing to go into the weeds because I can do it with Tina Peters' trial.
I'd like to get into the weeds. The weeds sounds really fun.
Well, basically, you're able to manipulate the trial and the jury in order to get the result you want. So, like in the Trump jury verdict against him in New York, the criminal verdicts, I wrote an entire super long article about how the judge just basically crafted the jury instructions. So it was pretty certain they would find him guilty. So you've got that going on. And then you've got what else going on during the trial? The judges, and by the way, I'm worried the judge is doing that in Tina Peters' trial for the jury, because he started drafting the jury instructions yesterday. And then during the trial, the judge keeps out all the helpful evidence to the election integrity people, litigants. So, for example, in the Tina Peters trial, this judge has basically, excluded almost all of the exonerating evidence that would help Tina Peters. Occasionally some of it sneaks in, but the judge will just say, sustain the objection by the prosecution. So the jurors, are supposed to not even consider it. And, the biggest farce during that trial, in my opinion, was when Tina Peters' defense tried to bring on another county clerk who had done the same thing she had done, like backed up his voting database hard drive. And that guy got on the stand, and the prosecution and the judge, and I refer to the judge as an arm of the prosecution because sometimes he argues their case better than they do. He couldn't get out a single word. Like, he basically said like his name and his position, and they cut him off from anything.
In the little bit of the Tina Peters trial that I saw, the jury had 2 questions to ask one of the witnesses, and the judge reviewed them and decided one of them was inappropriate. And I was gobsmacked because, prosecutorial immunity or the adversarial, the advocates of a court of law, it amazes me that judges have not only appointed themselves as the arbiter, the deciders of what is procedurally correct and what is a matter of fact, but also to appoint themselves as somebody who can tell a jury what to do. Do we mention judges in the Constitution, or do we mention the judicial branch? And are we guaranteed a right to a trial by judge or a right to a trial by jury of our peers? It would seem to me. Do you happen to know of any disputes between juries or jury foremans and a judge? Because if I and this I'll probably never be set on a jury, because if they ask me, one, I believe in jury nullification. I think it is jury nullification and state nullification were integral to the original understanding of how the United States of America were to operate. But it would also seem to me that a jury could call a judge into contempt for not abiding by their wishes. I mean, are they not like the embodiment of civil law? I guess, long story short, have you ever heard of a jury call a judge into contempt?
Sorry, guys. Stupid acid reflux. Years of stress from the state bar coming after me like destroyed my health. So basically, the reason I don't see these jury foremans going after judges, sorry, I believe the problem is it's such a technical level of expertise to get to a judge's level of knowledge that I don't think these juries think they are prepared to take the judges on. Like, one of the reasons I'm happy to be out of law is because to be a really good lawyer, you have to know all these arcane rules and statutes and, procedures. You have to, work within this box. And a lot of these rules and laws are just constantly being changed and updated. And I'm a big picture person, and I'm just not the detail oriented. And so I just got bored. So I believe, right, just for a jury foreman to try to take a judge on, it's just too much. The judge can always come back and just point out this little detail, or you didn't know this, or you didn't know that. So, that's my response to that. And I wanted to just address a couple other things you brought up. So I forgot to mention, when these judges are able to keep out all this evidence, we saw in the Tina Peters trial, the way they did it is they just said it wasn't relevant. And that gets back to that, vague, broad thing. That's how people are able to dominate and control the legal system. You use something that's vague and broad, and the judge just keeps saying all this evidence that would exonerate her is not relevant. And I think it's brought out a really bad flaw in the legal system that a judge gets so much control over that. And then you brought up the jury question. Well, I bet these jury questions that are not being allowed, they're trying to get into the type of stuff that would exonerate Tina Peters, which the judge doesn't want to let in. And finally, I'll just point out, this is something I hammer a lot. We all know the Dominion lawsuit against Fox News, which was considered like the biggest, defamation lawsuit jury verdict in history, and millions and millions of dollars. And I believe that was directly due to how the judge said he was going to draft the jury instructions. The judge said that he was going to instruct the jury, you have to treat anything that Sidney Powell or Rudy Giuliani and the others said on Fox News as false. So there was no way the jury was going to find any other way but that Fox News was guilty.
I sat on a town board for a number of years, and when I was sitting on the town board, I began to understand what a great power it is to be able to set the agenda. And mayors are given that power, and people can yell and scream at you as a member of an electoral body. But if the things that are brought before, the matters that are not brought to the table, are not done in a way in which the question at hand is presented, or if they are just absolutely ignored, then they just magically never appear. They never come for consideration. So I absolutely understand and see that power, that very happy power that judges get to wield, and how that can be used to subvert justice as found by a jury of peers. Have you followed at all what's been going on in Venezuela? Because it's interesting that the United States, the State Department, the federal government, um, uh, tell us or toe the line that we're going to have more security in electronic solutions for our elections, but then turn around and in a foreign country, whenever it might be expedient for the United States to get our hand on somebody else's oil, we question that same process. Have you followed that at all?
A little bit. I mean, I've mainly just been following their last election because they're just so obvious with the voter fraud there. I mean, unlike here where we actually try to hide the voter fraud, I'm not saying we as in us, but they're just more blatant about it there.
Well, and I don't mean to take us down to South America to talk about Venezuela, but it's just it's high on my mind, especially when we talk about elections here, to think about alternative scenarios or cases. Another thing that we haven't brought up, because we talked a lot about prosecutorial immunity. So Trump versus the United States, and you brought up the Trump case with regards to the New York case against him. I do believe the Georgia RICO case against him has been dismissed, and not only that, but the Georgia concerns about the Fulton County election. I do believe that those have been reopened as to whatever happened there. Very interesting as we approach another election. But to Trump versus the United States, it would seem that as the judicial interference with the electoral process at various levels in the United States becomes more and more of an issue, that at least at the level of the Supreme Court, some are beginning to remember that an election is a I don't know, a more decisive answer than a judicial election. So I don't know if I have any questions, but Trump or I don't know if you want to comment on that. That's basically how I read Trump versus the United States. I mean, I know that Joe Biden or President Biden and many on the left have claimed that this makes the president a king, but it seems to me that there are some very valid limiting factors. Is the president, is it an official act? And not only that, I would even argue that we do that the check on the president being a king goes back to that election. So did you have any thoughts about Trump versus the United States when that came through, that ruling?
Yeah, I mean, my kind of assessment of it is this. If we live in one of the best countries in the United States, we've got these much more ethical leaders supposedly than other countries. They're under intense scrutiny. You would think that somebody who is president would be very careful not to commit crimes. They've got the top attorneys surrounding them. They've got the best advice. So if people are bringing criminal, charges against a sitting president, the odds are they're not going to be valid. And so I think that's what the Supreme Court was kind of stating in their decision. They were like, we're not Venezuela. So to try to come after a president who's under all this scrutiny and surrounded by a lot of these people who really are pretty, ethical, and they're trying to, figure out where the law is, you're just wasting his time. And so, that's kind of how I saw it from a big picture look. But when it comes to, removing the president at the ballot box versus, trying to get rid of him through the courts, I believe the left has turned into by any means necessary. So I think they are trying to master, getting the right out of office using every method possible. That's what this is coming down to. And so if they can't win in the judicial system, they're going to election fraud at the ballot box. kind of where I end
Yeah.
up.
Well, I think there's also a great check in something else that we have forgotten for 100 years in the United States, and that's the jurisdictions of the federal government and the states. You know, I think in the mind of most Americans, if the president punched somebody that they didn't like, I would say the state has the right to call that into a court and call that into question. Because they have jurisdiction over bodies and those physical acts, and the federal government's jurisdiction is over commerce. But we've long allowed we've long allowed a, a legislative and judicial abuse of the associations of commerce to put things into the realm of the federal government, and so I think there's a check there too. The left, the Democratic Party, is not only going after Donald Trump through every through the power of the Department of Justice, an administrative agency under the president, under the executive, and in various states, but they're also going after Bobby Kennedy, a third party candidate. The Biden administration did not give Secret Service protection to Bobby Kennedy until after the attempted Trump assassination. Absolutely mind blowing. Not only that, but they have waged a legal battle against him in every state of the nation or state of the union. Have you been following any of that? I mean, I just listened to Bobby yesterday. He was on Spaces and talking about the latest case brought against him in New York for questioning his signatures there. Has that been on your radar?
It's been on my radar a little bit. I mean, enough that I can say a few things about it. And, what it strikes me as, the left doesn't just target, conservative Christians on the right anymore. They've expanded it. And I always tell these rhinos, you think you're so great turning on, conservative Republicans, but they're coming for you next. You're just next on their list. And I don't see why people don't understand that. Bobby Kennedy they don't like him because, at first he was a Democrat from, the revered Kennedy family. And so the fact that he was bucking the system as loudly as he was, as charismatically as he was, and as well-spoken as he was, that made him a huge target. And so even though, it's clear he's not going to be elected president, he's got a huge bully pulpit. He's right up there with Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk. He is a huge threat to them, and what they're doing to this man. And I get mad when it's like older guys. My dad's now an older guy. Like, why can't you just leave these people alone and not giving them Secret Service protection? Like, that is literally putting their lives in danger. Like, I thought prosecution was bad, going after people trying to prosecute him, but putting their lives in danger. I mean, these people are sick.
Agreed. That was especially disturbing to me. And then the old I don't know, bureaucratic hijinks of sending that person before Congress to not answer questions and replacing them to somebody else. Like like some of the oldest tricks in the book. I guess one other issue that I wonder if is on your radar, Phil Lyman, running for or the Republican consideration for governor of Utah, and Spencer Cost. And Phil Lyman has been on Twitter and asking to see the signatures and the vote results going on in Utah. Have you been following that at all either?
Not as closely as I should have, but I will tell you this much. I mean, since that guy does have the guts to actually do that, especially in a state that, as we all know, has been controlled by rhinos pretty much for the last few years, I'm fearful for him. I mean, he's putting himself out there in an establishment state that's, become a lot like Arizona because of the cheating. We have all these rhinos in charge, now, and you're just putting yourself up for being a target. Like, you mark my words, they will come after him and prosecute him.
I agree. I'm loath to see it, but I'm also glad that he is he's righteous in his his campaign to at least see the signatures and to question the count. And if we believed in democracy and we at least believed in our electoral system, I don't know why anybody would not allow that inspection as to what occurred there. Well, Rachel, we're at the hour. Thank you so much for coming on. Did you have anything in closing that you wanted to say? I've loved the conversation. It's been incredible. I should say, before I give you a chance, Grant, did you have any closing questions, or should we let Rachel close this on out?
None from me.
All I'd like to say is, first of all, I predict that the jury is, based on their questions that they have been allowed to ask, I think they're probably a bunch of Democrats who don't like Tina Peters. So I don't have a lot of hopes for how they're going to decide this trial. That, combined with, I'm sure the judges, I listened to him for some of the day yesterday. He's trying to bias the jury instructions. So that's not good, but I do think it'll be reversed on appeal. And my last comment I want to make is I have zero confidence in the 2024 election. I think they've mastered the cheating. And in most states, we have not been able to fix the election laws. So I'm not predicting a good outcome.
Well, we'll leave it on a black pill. I don't know, crossing our fingers and hoping for the best with regards to that. But
sounds like we need to put up a Polymarket question for that one.
Ooh, I think that's right. See, Rachel, have you checked out Polymarket? Have you seen that? Part of it was somewhat in the crypto sphere. It's a website in which people bet on political questions.
I heard, am I wrong? I heard like they're actually predicting Trump's going to win. Is that right?
Oh yeah. I mean, so Harris has been, the unnominated Democratic candidate so far, has been climbing. I haven't checked it today, but yeah, absolutely. Donald Trump has been the favorite. Wow, no, Kamala has passed him.
Well, this changes every minute, every day. So it's like
Can you bring up the chart, the history chart on it?
Yeah, I think the chart's straight. Oh, maybe it isn't.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, Rachel, polling, and I like Polymarket because it sort of flips. It's sort of both like putting money where mouth is, and also the notion of polling as like calling a couple of people as gainable as the judge setting the rules to the jury. So it's interesting to me that the internet has now given us a website to where you can go check on people betting on who's going to win, and hopefully they're there to try to make a little bit of money.
Yeah, and this is not a little bit of money. There's $500 million on the line here.
That's a big one. So,
well, cheating doesn't affect it.
Well, that's what we got to put in here as a new question. So like election. See if there's something in here about that.
Has Roaring Kitty shorted the presidential poll? That might be the question.
You guys, I had all these bets going on the 2022 election. Not money, but if my guy wins, you got to read this. Things like that. And like we couldn't even finish our bets because I thought there was too much cheating going on, so I didn't believe the outcome.
Yeah, I had bets going on too, but I lost all of mine, or I seeded them at some point. But I also didn't bet on the presidential election in 2020, or I don't know. My favorite thing is senators. But enough of this Polymarket. Let's close it out, and we'll call it a day. Rachel, again, thank you so much for coming on, and we will. I'll buy you a beer, I guess, if you're right with regards to the Tina Peters election. But hopefully the jury exonerates her, because it is it's sad that that her bona fide concern for our election security has drug her through the mud for so many years, and bravo to her for not pleading out or turning state's witness on some other scapegoat that the lawfare had turned its head to. So we'll leave it there.
Thank you guys for having me on. It's been so much fun.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.